Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. As you can tell, even though it's 85 degrees outside, I'm in my basement apartment, which means I have to wear a hoodie and long pants. It's like, it's like December. It's like Christmas in July here. So I don't know what to say. Anyway, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
All right, so let's talk about Hard Knocks because I don't understand the way they go about it. So
I do.
You would think that teams would have some sort of input as to this show, what gets aired, if they want to do it, because they're gonna follow them around throughout training camp and the first few preseason games, right? Actually, all the preseason. And it turns out, like I thought the Jets maybe were kind of like, no, but didn't mind it that much. But actually, they minded it. Like the coach didn't want it. Aaron Rodgers didn't want it. Aaron Rodgers came out and said yesterday they jammed it down our throats. And so what I don't understand is how a league can have a show like this and just decide, hey, it's going to be you. You drew the short straw. Now, I don't know how viewers even think about it when they're watching it, but like this is the most vocal I've seen a team go against not wanting to be on it. And I do kind of wonder, is the shelf life for Hard Knocks going to be much longer based on this?
Well, Kev, it's getting to be old hat. I mean, really, it's like it's not Bruce Boudreau, saying the F-bomb on the first, behind the scenes thing when it was Washington versus Pittsburgh, I think it was. Then it was something really interesting and groundbreaking. Now I think it's pretty along all lines, football or hockey. It's old hat. And honestly, they're there because it's New York, because it's Aaron Rodgers, and they're sort of following, if it bleeds, it leads type of mentality. But I think it's boring, and I think it's going to be a snooze fest.
Yeah, but it works, for most people. I mean, you're not an average viewer. You're connected to, sports in a large way, but I think for the rank and file fan, I think it still does work. And I think that's why, in order for HBO to do it, that is who has it, right? Yeah,
yes,
it is.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. You got to get some assurances that you'll be left alone to do what you think is right. So, and I'm sure the NFL cut that deal with them, but that doesn't mean the team is happy about it. In fact, we know they're not. So, I don't know. Now this comes down to who has the power in the NFL. Is it the teams or is it the league? It seems like it's the league. So.
It does seem like it's the league. And it's an interesting thing, yeah.
I would think so as well because, again, this is something that is a broad, presentation, as Kevin just indicated, intended for a general audience to gain a peek into the inner workings of NFL teams as they prepare for a season. We know all that. But I think that therefore that's one of the reasons why I think it belongs under the auspices of the league, much like Netflix with Drive to Survive and Formula One. The teams have all 10 teams have to cooperate. They have to deal with the film crews that are there. It's not a team thing. It's like, if you're selected, you're one of our member clubs, and guess what? Tag, you're it.
Yeah, the Leafs didn't seem. I know that Kyle Dubas was in on. He wanted to do that whole thing that was on
Amazon.
Nothing Amazon series. The All or Nothing. He wanted that because I guess they had done it for a Premier League team, but it was an all year thing. It was not. It was lengthy. It wasn't just like they were there for.
I've still yet to watch it.
They did it. Manchester. I mean, they did that for Manchester. It was the same thing for Manchester City. They're with the team the entire season. So it's not, it's just they've been doing different sports with this All or Nothing.
Yeah, and it was a little, to me, it was like a little intrusive, especially with the team. I just didn't, I don't know how many teams would agree to it. I mean, if there's a team looking for attention, fine.
It's also unique with with everything being sort of in that, Canadian division, COVID. Yeah. It had that sort of weird vibe to it that maybe that maybe the Manchester City series weren't because we were under normal health auspices.
I mean, there's still an audience for it and an appetite for it. I mean, of all things, I saw or actually listened on public radio to a sort of documentary approach looking at what the series that they did on F1 did for that sport. Like
Yeah.
it grew it exponentially, just from letting people in on the inside and seeing what drivers go through and getting their
I mean,
personalities.
the quarterback series on Netflix is really good. The one Peyton Manning put together is really good, but that's one guy. You got to get a whole team to do this.
No, it's not one guy. It's three. There's
Oh no, I mean, but it's one guy.
three isolated players. But again, there's
Right, but
it's,
I mean,
that's how
it's
you
one guy
produce.
from each team. That's
I
all.
mean, I would guess HBO would just say, "You guys don't want to do it, so be it." You know, it's either you're all in or we don't want you. You know what I mean? Like you got to give
do that. They forced them to do it. Like
this is the end. I mean, it's
Well,
not
you're talking the NFL. I'm saying the HBO would tell the NFL, if you don't give us all access, we're just simply not going to do it.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's-
sure. That's
NFL's not bad.
definite.
I-
But you do
I
kind
heard-
of wonder what is that deal, because it's really unlike any deal in any other sport, because every other sport has had these kind of things and these kind of things have gone away, but not the NFL. So who knows?
A couple quick things, unrelated to sports, but it may have a relation to sports. You know, the actor strike and the writer strike that's going on in Hollywood right now. They're saying that it is likely going to affect a lot of, you know, programs that are normally on TV starting that usually start their new seasons in September and October. And there is a talk that one thing that may happen is that ABC might put NHL games that are programmed for ESPN on ABC because they need the programming. There's just so much Dancing with the Stars and you know, all
reality
the
reality
reality TV.
Real Housewives of Tulsa or whatever the heck.
right. There's just so much of that programming. So if they have the ability to move sports onto their big networks, now people don't think it's going to last that long, but that might be a backup plan for them. The other thing is, Russ, I wanted to get your opinion and everybody else's opinion on Buster Olney's report yesterday that he thinks that the team that's going to go all out to get Shohei Ohtani before the deadline is the New York Yankees.
Well, I think it's the logical.
Here's my reaction.
I think it's the logical one to throw out there because the Yankees always get thrown out there first.
Right.
We know the Mets have interest, but the Mets probably don't want to give up the players that it's going to take to get Ohtani, because the Mets have wanted Ohtani because their GM is Billy Epler and he was his GM. I don't think it'll be the Yankees either, though. I think it'll end up being somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, my Facebook was alive yesterday with a fake report of the Dodgers completing a deal with Ohtani. So
yeah, I think that's likely because they got a lot of cap room. You know, they want them.
This whole offseason, basically, the fact they didn't really go hard out to pursue a lot of moves this offseason.
True.
Everybody
was left with the assumption they're saving up, they're loading ammunition for Ohtani.
Yeah.
They're saving up their S&H green stamps for Ohtani. All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, July 14th, 2023, Bastille Day.
I'm Anthony Mingione.
Kevin Allen.
Right. S&H green stamps. I'm Russ Cohen.
Kevin Allen, Detroit Hockey Now.
You have to ruin
I
the
know
beginning.
what they are.
You have to ruin the beginning of the show with your questions, Ron.
Let me dust off that reference.
Yeah.
There we go. Now it's ready.
That reference worked for me, Mike.
Yeah, I'm the king of the obscure, and I'm Michael Ladello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the sort of breaking news that happened about an hour ago. The report that Anthony DeAngelo is being bought out of the final year of his contract.
Not even a report. The Flyers are pretty much they were the first one out. They said we are buying out Tony DeAngelo. That was a simple statement from Danny Briere.
Originally, it was reported as a termination, but then it was corrected by a few different sources.
Mm-hmm.
And I was confused when they said termination. It would have to be a mutual termination, but what it was Noah Cates was a restricted free agent, and he agreed to a 2-year contract, and they had the 72-hour window, and you're going to see that over the next few weeks for teams wanting to buy out players. With that 72-hour window, they chose to buy out DeAngelo. The cap hit will be 2 years at $1.666 million. And now that frees him up to go wherever he wants to go. And Anthony, obviously the rumors will be, well, he's going to go to Carolina, but maybe not, because Carolina seems to be still in the Karlsson thing. But what do you think of the whole situation with
I think this was probably, after a while, the Flyers really had no other tack to take in this circumstance. They had waited quite some time, obviously, with for the reported trade that was supposedly agreed to, and they were waiting on. But the longer it went, the more likely it was, especially after they finished, as you stated, after they finished off the Cates contract well out from the arbitration window, that they had that window to work with. So, and again, the good news the thing for Philadelphia, it does open cap space. About 3.33 for this year, I believe, is opened up. And the second thing is that now, because they didn't have to do a salary retention deal, the Flyers still retain now. The only salary retention deal they've done is Kevin Hayes. So they still have 2 salary retention slots going into the 23-24 season if they do any other deals. So it provides them flexibility in that regard. So
it's still counting against next year's cap too, though.
No, it counts. No, it's dead money for next year for sure. But if you're trying to maneuver things for this year, and again, considering where the Flyers are likely to be next year, that dead money is not necessarily going to be something that's going to hurt too much.
Well, I'm a little okay. I knew that they wanted to resolve the DeAngelo situation one way or the other, Russ. But I'm surprised, because the Cal Peterson deal is something that I thought that they would buy out, unless they think they're going to trade Carter Hart, and we'll get into something related to Carter Hart a little later on. But I would have thought that they would buy, and maybe they will. With Morgan Frost. If they go, I don't think he's arbitration eligible, so I'm not sure if the window is open.
No, I don't believe he's not arbitration eligible.
Yeah, if they have any other windows, then they may use that to buy out Peterson. But what did you think of the DeAngelo situation?
Yeah, so when we do our Locked On Flyers show, we do it a day. We have to tape a day in advance. So 2 days ago, we came up with the idea, hey, we should do a whole segment on DeAngelo because of what might happen. So we went through all the scenarios, and we did go through the buyout scenario. And I even said, hey, look, I'm not an agent, but I believe there's another buyout window here for them, and I think it could end up being that. And so I can't say I'm surprised, because we talked about it. And the reason I felt strong about the buyout was because of all the things Carolina was up to and trying to fit in under the cap, and then also having to pay Morgan Frost, because the worst scenario is if you would have held on to DeAngelo and given him like the Frankie Corrado treatment, you would have to wait for Morgan Frost to play at the beginning of the season until all of a sudden the LTIR money for Ryan Ellis goes on the books. So you don't want to keep Morgan Frost out of camp, though, because he might be your number 1 or number 2 center based on if Couturier plays and all those other things, right? So we looked at the scenario and we figured, okay, this is probably happening. And so we did, talk about it and talked about what the cap hit would be and what the ramifications were. So that's not a shock. Now, Mike, the Cal Peterson it's a horrible buyout. So they would never do it. They're not going to do that, because it's just, if you look at the buyout on it, it's bad. So they're not going to do it, and they don't have a reason to do it anyhow. So not expecting that. But as far as this goes, I think DeAngelo is going to end up in Carolina when Carolina gets everything figured out with whatever they're doing, with whatever scraps they have left. I think they're going to pay Tony with that, and I think Tony's going to play there.
Kev, talk first about if you have any thoughts on DeAngelo being bought out, but it really seems like the whole thing was held up because of the Karlsson situation. And I mean, we don't know when this is going to be resolved. We keep hearing that it's close with Pittsburgh or close with Carolina, but obviously Danny Briere didn't want to wait any longer on the possibility that, if they do trade for Karlsson, then, they probably don't want DeAngelo. Then it's probably the question is moot. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think this actually opens things up a little bit for DeAngelo. I mean, he's getting the buyout money, and he'll be able to sort of pick his team based on, the number of options he has. I think he'll have more options if he goes for, I'll play for $900,000.
Even at $900, though, Kev, how many more do you think he has? Honestly, I don't think he has more than 2 other options as an example.
But 3's better than 1. You know, I mean, so I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't know, but you know, if you're an NHL general manager and you know you got a hole on your defense and you really could use a puck mover, you know, he's your guy. You know, so you know, who knows what'll happen here? I mean. How many times have you heard a GM saying, you know, I'll take just about anybody if he can, you know, help my team? So
yeah, I mean, right now, Kev, the Arizona Coyotes only have 5 one-way contracts on defense.
Yeah.
So you know, and he's been in Arizona before.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to choose them. I think he's going to wait it out.
No, he might. But I'm just saying, Russ, if it's a Gostisbehere situation where he could go there and play and then maybe get traded someplace, you know, there's San Jose, and if they trade Carlson, they may need to defend. I mean, we're talking about teams that have availabilities. Now, I do know that
Carolina is just going to do it anyhow because he wants to play there and they want him, and now it's going to cost them less.
Well, yeah, but Kev, if they trade for Carlson. Now, they're going to trade Pesce, probably, if they trade Carlson, either in a separate deal. So then you have Burns and you have Carlson on the right side. Okay, then maybe DeAngelo fits in as a third pairing guy. But, yeah, it's going to be something that's not going to be costly for that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think the Penguins are going to end up making that deal. And it's just a gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think it's being held up by, you know, we've talked about this before, but Sharks haven't really come down on the ask. Like they want a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's that maybe it doesn't be 2 first-round picks, but it's a first and a second and players. So
they've got all summer, right? Like they're not in a rush.
Yeah, no, they've got time to get this done. So, but you know, I think this is the best thing for DeAngelo. This is the best thing for the Carolina Hurricanes. You know, there's a lot of winners here. And then probably the best for the Flyers. You know, they wanted to move on. They wanted to get.
The only reason it's not the best for the Flyers, yes, they do get some cap space, but they were going to get an asset before. Now they don't get an asset.
Well, we don't know what kind of asset they were going to get in that trade.
They were going to get a player. They were going to get a player.
The question was going to be whether or not, you know, in terms of it was a balance of, at the end of the day, the amount of money you're going to have flexibility wise, you're probably, you know, 50% retention versus obviously at a buyout, maybe it's a little bit, you know, obviously a bit more in this circumstance. So you would like to get something for him, but in reality, again, the fact that they didn't have to use one of their salary retention slots is also probably seen as a bonus for them.
Right. Another situation on a sort of on a different note, but this one was a contract termination, and based on the report that first came out from Katie Strang, it's understandable why the Arizona Coyotes terminated the contract of Alex Galchenyuk. It was reported that he was arrested on July 9th due to a number of charges, included hit and run, private property hit and run, disorderly conduct, failure to obey, resisting arrest, threatening and intimidating, and then he was arraigned on Monday and summarily terminated. His contract was terminated by the Coyotes. I mean, Russ, this is a guy who was 3rd overall for the Montreal Canadiens, and this is not a long time ago, but long enough that, you know, his career, and we don't know what's going on with his life right now, so we won't touch on that, but we just look at this player's career in his late 20s, 3rd overall pick. He was probably mishandled by the Canadiens in terms of where they placed him, where they thought he was going to be. And since then, his career has just been sort of, you know, I think generally disappointing.
Yeah, well, now this is it for it. I don't think he has a career anymore. I think this will end it. And, you know, my only comment is get an Uber, man. Like, that's it. That's my comment.
Yeah, if it was, I mean, with all that was reported, you would think that it was alcohol related. We don't know, and I'm not going to say if it was or not. All I'm saying is what he did was.
Otherwise, it would have been mentioned in the report.
Not in this initial report. So I didn't want
the initial report, but I mean, yeah, that's
you
we
would
don't know
think,
if alcohol is involved or not. We just don't.
But I just look at him in terms of his playing career. You know, he had a lot of potential. I believe he scored 30 goals one year for the Canadiens. And really after that, he's been on a number of teams. He's been in Toronto and Ottawa and now Arizona. It really, it's sort of sad. I thought he had a lot of potential, but it just didn't really come to pass. Okay. Kevin I'm sure he'll be back. There was a report from Rick Westhead and a lot of stuff, and we talked about this at the draft because, we were saying about the players who were involved in the 2018 Hockey Canada situation that was being investigated. And the report, even back at the beginning of the Stanley Cup final, Russ, when you were there in Vegas, where Bettman said, well, the report's going to come out sometime in July. We're just, vetting it or whatever. They wanted, I'm okay. They want to bury the report. They want to report it, but they don't want to report it when anything hockey related is going on. So you weren't going to hear it at the draft. You weren't going to hear it during the Stanley Cup final. You were going to hear it on a Friday in July. And I wouldn't be surprised if the report came out today. But Rick Westhead said that a lot of managers around the league are waiting for this report to find out what the details are, because it's going to affect a number of careers. If these players are being sanctioned, or if they're, there's arrests or whatever is going to happen, it's going to affect a lot of careers.
Yeah, when I was at that press conference, I tweeted out that, Bill Daly said, hey, they just got the report, but they didn't have time to read it. And, that was like, okay.
Yeah.
We all knew what was up. The whole press corps knew what was up at that point. So, yeah, it'll be out one of these Fridays or slow days, and it will make big news regardless of when it comes out. It could come out Saturday in the middle of the night, and it's going to make big news because it'll start making big news in Canada first, and then it'll get to us. So, it's one of those things we've been waiting on. It's one of those things that I think everything was done thoroughly. And it's also one of these things that after it's reported, there's going to be a lot of contention. There's going to be contention from agents. There's going to be contention from players. There's going to, you're hearing about possible lawsuits. Like it's going to be messy no matter what.
Anthony?
Yeah, and it's interesting certainly to see, and it's obviously going to have, depending on what happens, obviously, with whoever the players are. In some ways, I never want to sort of read too much into things, but when the Flyers acquired, obviously, obviously salaries and everything matched and everything with Cal, but trust me, it raised my eyebrow when it was Cal Peterson who was acquired in this circumstance, especially considering Carter Hart's circumstance and how much of a cap hit it would be in terms of overall the Flyers having invested in goaltending. So, but again, we don't know anything yet. Nothing's been reported yet or anything along those lines. But teams are bracing. There's going to be definite some ramifications here for teams. They're going to make hard decisions as to what they're going to do. We'll see what they'll be.
Kev, I can understand the point of view of some of these GMs who have players who are on that 2018 team waiting for the results here, because it could affect, if there is a player, I won't say any names. If there's a player that is involved and that is accused, the last consideration for a general manager should be, what does this mean in terms of, but that's what they have to think about is what does this mean to this player's career and the value of that player. And they have to factor that in. So that's something that when this report comes out is probably going to be top of the list in terms of the minds of these GMs.
Yeah. I think it's a two-pronged approach. You have to have, if you're a GM, you got to worry about the implications to your team, number one, because that's your job. But then from the human being, you got to look at it and just say, this is the right thing to do.
Right.
We have to uphold some kind of standard that future generations will realize the consequences for these kinds of actions. So I think it'll be severe. I do. So it's going to be interesting just because there's been so much publicity, and publicity always contributes to the punishment phase of the investigation, just because no one wants to be perceived as being soft on these kinds of things. So,
right.
It's going to be interesting to see who was involved and what the punishment will be, and how the GMs will react to how it interferes with their team.
Okay, so let's I know that we were after talking about the news of the day that things are slowing down. So I think it's starting to be a good time to like look back at what happened after July the 1st, as for certain teams, and sort of evaluate what they did and whether that was good or bad, or whether they accomplished their goals. And I mean, we'll start in the Metro Division today, and I look at Carolina and Kev. They really, other than the move of adding Orlov, I mean, they added Orlov on the blue line. I think that's a really significant move in terms of adding him for 2 years. They added Michael Bunting, who I think is could be a top 6 forward. But really what they did was they re-signed all their guys. So now the move to come, if they are in on Carlson, if they make that move, and if they do trade out Pesci, then we reevaluate and we look at them again in September and say, okay, they made a lot of moves, but right now it's pretty much they kept their powder dry, other than those two, the Orlov and Bunting.
But I think those are significant moves for them.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think Orlov has gotten better and better and better each season. And I think that gives them, he plays the type of game they want to play. And I think he just, they were going to lose Pesci, and they wanted to make sure they'd be able to maintain their spot among the, top 3 defensive teams in the league in terms of their blue line play. So I really like that. And then Bunting, I mean, everybody kind of likes him in terms of what he can do for a team. And it's really, his cost isn't, still seems like a bargain given his production. So,
yeah, I mean, Anthony, the thing is, and I'm a defender of Bunting, and I have been since the Leafs signed him a couple years ago. I thought he was a fantastic signing for them, especially for what they were paying him, which was $900,000. He played. It is not a. It is a really good trait to be a player who plays well with talent, and some players don't. How many years did it take for them to find the right line mates for Sidney Crosby? Bunting fit with Tavares, and he fit, more importantly, with Matthews in Toronto. He was a Calder nominee. He scored 23 goals 2 times in a row. I think he's a really good ad for Carolina, and I think he's going to make Leaf fans sort of rue the day that they were criticizing Toronto, for his lack of control. Well, honestly, there weren't many players who were sticking up and doing the things and he did them, and that's a valuable commodity as a player.
Absolutely. And listen, at the end of the day, their playoff run was a good one, and then obviously they hit the Florida Panthers, and the Panthers played tough, hard-nosed sandpaper style of play. And Bunting, again, if you're going to try to counter that, I think in some ways Bunting, I think, helps in that regard. You're going to have him. I think he balances, as you said, I do believe he balances out, a top 6. You put him with an Aho, you put him with any number of other forwards that Carolina has. I think he's in that he will be a natural fit for them. And I thought it was one of the better offseason acquisitions that a team could make for the needs that they had. And again, the Orlov, as Kevin stated everything necessary on Orlov. It's a very neat fit. You can see how he fits in with the rest of that defensive core. And again, they're still, they very well, again, they're looking for, they want to play a high tempo game. They want to pressure. They want to be able to pressure in the offensive zone. And each of those acquisitions, I think, works in Rob Brind'Amour's system.
Russ?
Yeah, I still think they're right up at the top of the Metro. I think with the moves they made, plus they'll get Svechnikov back, they're in pretty good shape. If they get Carlson, that probably puts them as the leader in the Metro. But right now they're right there. And so I think it's a good offseason for them. Yes, we all would have liked them to upgrade in goal. I think, even they probably would have liked to have upgraded in goal. But they've gone the other route of trying to correct other problems. And they're definitely going to be better
There's
next year.
still, in this case, to me, Russ, there's still, even with the need to upgrade in goal, the main team there, everybody seems to have them tagged to compete with in the Metro is the Devils, and the gold, and they also have the same. Devils have the same
problem.
question mark as well. So
They'll beat
Carolina,
the Rangers with the supposedly better goaltending, the Devils.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kev, Columbus didn't go free agency with their big moves. They, Columbus is not a destination in terms of free agents. They made trades. They added Severson. They added Provorov. They had the 3rd overall pick, and they got Adam Fantilli. And more importantly, they got Mike Babcock. So, I think they're going to be better. I don't know. I have questions about their goaltending. I still have questions about, obviously Werenski coming back from a serious injury and the consistency of their offense. But Babcock seems to get the best out of players. So what are your thoughts on Columbus?
Yeah, he prepares teams for games very well. And so I think they'll be more competitive on a nightly basis just for that reason. But, the moves they did make, the Provorov trade in particular, I thought really upgrades their defense. Like he's got to come over there thinking, I got to get my career back on course. Like you remember where we all thought he was going to be at this point in his career, and he's not there. So I'm sure he's going to be looking to, take it up a notch here, and they'll give him every opportunity to be successful because, they want to transform this Columbus team from also ran to a team that is going to compete for the playoffs, and they want to do it quickly. So, and Severson, I think will improve them as well. He can handle the puck, he can do a lot of things. He's been around the block, and Babcock. One of his strengths is he makes the team better defensively. He just demands it. It's not his system per se. It's just his will. Like, this is the way we're going to play. And anybody that, doesn't want to play this way isn't going to
play.
Yeah. So I think it's important that they get a guy like him to do things. And I think Merzlikins is okay. I think he'll be fine. But
he just had a really bad year.
Bad year with a bad team, with a team that struggled mightily in front of him.
Right.
So it's all part of same issues,
and all their younger players are going to be better, this season. So that's going to be good, and I think Fantilli will be an impact, rookie. I think he's stepping right out of the University of Michigan. He's already got a pro body, he's got a pro approach, and I think he's ready to go. Now, he's still a rookie, so what he'll produce remains to be seen. But I think he's going to help them offensively.
Russ, I heard Babcock saying about Patrick Laine, and I remember this game vividly because it was right after the 4-goal game that Matthews scored his first NHL game. I think the next week they played in Winnipeg, and it was head-to-head Matthews versus Laine, and Laine scored a hat trick, including a game winner in overtime. And Babcock basically said, "That's the Patrick Laine I want to see." It's like, well, yeah, okay, but I don't know if that Patrick Laine is there anymore. Yeah, I don't know if he's that. I don't know if that Patrick Laine is there anymore.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. And I do think, I think Fantilli would have been better off going back to college for another year, but I do think he'll still be an impact player. Kent Johnson definitely will be a little better this year. He's still only 20. So, like Kevin said, that's all apt as far as getting a little bit more of the young guys. Goudreau's there. Merzlikins, I still don't know if he's a true number one in this league. I don't. And I looked at the standings, and you know what? The interesting thing is the Metro is so good, you could put 20 wins onto Columbus's record last year, and they'd still be fourth. And so it's hard for me to say they're even going to make a dent in the playoffs based on that because the Metro is just too damn good.
Yeah.
And also,
let me add just one thing to that. I take everyone back to the time when Russ and I were debating whether, at 25 you're too late, and Russ made an impassioned, essentially case that there are players that come along. Well, Liney's only 25 years old.
Right.
That's true. I forget that even myself. So that's a good
yeah. So I mean, who knows? I mean,
No, it's a great point. it seems like he's been in the league so long that even I'd forgotten.
Yeah, it does feel like he's a 10-year veteran.
It does.
And there have been stretches over the last few years in Winnipeg and in Columbus where he's just red hot and scores like crazy and then gets hurt or then he goes into a slump. So, yeah, maybe Babcock can draw that out of him. Now, moving to New Jersey, they made a few ads. They traded for Foley. They signed Colin Miller. But really, Kev, they took care of their own house. They re-signed Bratt. They re-signed Timo Meyer. They're betting on the team that they have. They've added here or there. They added Chris Tierney a couple days ago. But really, they're going with the team that got into the playoffs and has a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I think there's still a chance they may land a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've been connected to both Gibson and Hellebuck. I think they have the pieces, the chips to make that trade happen. So it's going to be interesting to see because, I think they showed last season that, they weren't just a hot team, a momentum team. They were a team kind of on its way up. And boy, if you really got just structured goaltending, just how much better they could be next season where you're instead of hoping you're going to have quality goaltending, you're just assured of it. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they'll make that move or not.
I mean, Anthony, they're really rolling the dice if they go with the Kira Schmid as their number one because they traded Blackwood.
Yeah, he did, but at the same time, I think Schmid has worked his way up. Now, I don't know. Again, I don't know if he's a number one. He can be a number one goaltender,
right.
But I thought he had good stretches for the Devils last season. How much of it is, a sustainable thing and not just a goalie that got on a heater, for lack of a better word, and kind of is going to go back to the mean in this circumstance.
I mean,
it depends. I think they'll explore, but it surprised me if they go into the season with Schmid and Vanacek. No, it wouldn't shock me even a little bit.
I mean, that's the thing, Russ. I think this team in the next couple of years is Stanley Cup level caliber with the talent that they have. It's just in goal that right now I don't think. Now, maybe Schmid can become that. Vanacek, I think, is a decent 1A, 1B type of guy. But unless Schmid takes a step up to a higher level that I don't see right now, I think they need to go outside the organization and get a Gibson or a Hellebuck.
I mean, we all say that. I mean, I covered that Game 7 in New Jersey, and Schmid handled it, man. I mean, he beat the New York Rangers in a Game 7. Like, that's something that is a big-time win. He's 23. It's not like he's a kid.
Yeah.
He's not like he's not a veteran goalie, but like he thinks the game pretty well. And I do think he is their goalie. I don't think it's Vanacek. I think it's Schmid.
No, I agree with you, Russ. I actually believe it's more likely to be. I think it's going to be Schmid. Vanacek, I think it's a solid. I think he's a solid backup spot starter for stretches, but I think, if the Devils go forward here with their goaltending tandem, I think Akira Schmid would be the guy who's going to get.
Yeah,
he's an innings eater, basically, in terms of using a baseball.
He could be better than that, Mike. I mean, I'm not going to say that. I mean, there are guys that do come up.
And if you have if you've got a good enough team in front, we've seen it enough times where if you got a good enough team in front of you, and I don't think I need to tell anybody here, who's the Stanley Cup winning goaltender this season.
Right. So
nobody that you would have expected. So
I'm not going to say he's an innings eater. I'm going to say Toffoli was a good pickup. Yeah. I do like the fact that they got Tierney because I still think Tierney has a little bit of playing in him too. The Devils could easily win that division, even with the goaltending they have. Yeah. And so they're right up there. And really, Timo Meyer is the key to their season because Timo Meyer did not add anything to the playoffs. He played well away from the puck, but his offense wasn't there. His offense needs to be there if they're going to be a Stanley Cup team. So that has to work out for them.
Yeah. Now, Kev, the Islanders, I mean, I think everybody has just widely criticized most of the signings that Lou did. The one I don't criticize is Sorokin. I think he's one of the best goaltenders in the league. You got him on 8 years, starting next year at 8, a little over 8. That's a great value. But like the Engvall contract is insane. The Mayfield is explainable because he's a veteran blue liner and $3.5 million on cap hit's not bad. But really, okay, they traded for Horvat before the deadline. everybody believes that they still need offense, a step up offensively, and they still really haven't addressed that. So until they do, I think they're going to be a bubble team trying to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they are destined for that this season as well, because they really didn't, address just even bringing some freshness to the entire team. Like I like the Mayfield re-signing. Yeah. I thought it was a good price. I think teams were going to pay more, but they were going to pay more over a shorter, contract.
Right.
So I like that deal. Obviously, Sorokin is, Sorokin. He's a difference maker.
You lock him as long as you can.
Yeah, for sure. So I get all that, but he needed to do something. Either you got to put all your eggs in the defensive basket, or you got to go out and get more offense. And he didn't do either. So
unless there's a trade that they're looking. I mean, if they were looking at Alex DeBrincat, obviously that that ship is well sailed even beyond their own power.
I mean, Patrick Kane, something like that.
I do wonder if they wheel to Philadelphia to talk about Travis Konechny. Possibly that could be another direction. I wonder again as a possibility at the depending on what the Islanders are would be wanting to discuss in that regard. But yeah,
he would be a nice fit for them.
I think he would fit in well.
Probably Wallstrom would be in the deal only because Wallstrom's being talked about. So
right,
Wallstrom, he's got to sign. He's got his qualifying, which we don't think he's going to sign his qualifying offer anyway, right? We think he's probably going to be going. He's going to be likely looking at a bridge deal.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be against it.
I would say this about the Islanders. Look, I do think they were autopilot signings. They were, and they kept what they've got. Fine, but it's hard to look at them and say, how are they going to be anything but fourth in that division? It's really hard to come up with an argument. If you want to say, if you're an Islander fan and say, well, they're better than the Rangers, they'll be in okay, fine. So they're in third, but that's the best they can do.
Right.
Yeah.
At least for the foreseeable future, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Sorokin keeps them in the playoff mix on his own, but to have success, to be one of the top three in that division and to have success getting out of the division in the playoffs, I think they need scoring, and they haven't addressed that yet. Now the Rangers, Russ, I'll start with you on this one. Even though they signed a bunch of old fogies, I think they're effective old fogies. I think having Quick as a backup, I think is fine. Wheeler on an $800,000 contract, fine. You didn't spend a lot of money on Bonino or Gustafson, and they got Keandre Miller on a bridge deal that fits into what they can afford. So I think actually they've now if they get Lafreniere signed, then it's a successful offseason for them.
I mean, to a degree. I mean, the Wheeler signing was really good because again, he's a bigger body. Even though he's slower these days, he's still going to be able to help them. And if they get in the playoffs, he'll definitely help them in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So Wheeler, there's no doubt, and they needed that help and size on the wing. So that's fine. Nick Bonino, I think he's past it. I know he could penalty kill, but the Rangers penalty kill was already pretty good. So I'm not sure there's anything significant there. To me, Gustafson, all he does is probably steal Zach Jones's job, and he just got signed for a 2-year deal. So that's a Laviolette thing because he's had him before. Okay, fine. I didn't love the offseason because the Rangers went from a team that, we're rebuilding to the rebuild's over to now it's okay to have 35-year-olds on your team again.
It's the pattern. We've discussed this before, haven't we, Russ?
Yeah. And so the change happened very quickly. And so I'm in the mindset that, the first year Laviolette buzz will probably help them, but I don't think they're necessarily much better than last year. I think they're marginally better. They're better without Patrick Kane, at least that Patrick Kane.
I'll give you a comparison.
Mike, and you can shake your head, but all the Ranger fans know it's
Russ,
true.
I'll give you a comparison here. This is reminding me a little bit of the Flyers when they brought in Alain Vigneault.
Yeah,
in some ways, it's not a complete comparison, but it's we're pushing we're pushing chips to the middle of the table, chips to the middle of the table here. With whatever their young core is, that's very.
And I do acknowledge in a couple months, Patrick Kane will probably come calling to them, because if he still wants to play for them, he's still going to try and play for them. And again, I'll worry about that and talk about that at the time. But I'm only talking about last year's Patrick Kane. That definitely disrupted things. But again, if you think about it, if he comes into this team and they're doing well at the beginning, in the middle of the season, he could be a disruptor again. So I'm not sure. It depends what he looks like.
Kev, Russ is wishy-washy when it comes to Patrick Kane. But I like the moves that they made, because none of them are long-term moves. You know, Bonino and Gustafson and Wheeler and Quick, they're all one-year contracts. So, you know, now the only thing I do agree with Russ is if you're going to hold back Zach Jones for a turnstile like Gustafson, who, you know, allows as many goals as he helps score, then I think that's stupid. But, you know, I think if they want a veteran support structure to the players already there, I think they've accomplished that goal.
Yeah, and I think the Rangers got an incredible, you know, even though it's a bridge deal. I mean, it's a low bridge deal for Miller. Like if I'm Owen Power in Buffalo, I'm going no.
That's what I wrote about, Kev. I says, do you think Kevin Adams is going to use that as a blueprint? Hey, Keandre Miller took less than 4, Owen. Yeah, like no.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. So, I mean, that was a real help to them. And, you know, you can make an argument, and a good one, that, you know, he has not, you know, fully reached his potential. We don't really even know what Miller is.
Right.
But we know he's more than he's getting in terms of his contract. Right. So I like that. And, you know, aren't the Rangers where you should be when you start adding those kind of pieces they did? I mean, I think they are. I mean,
no, because they're not there defensively. So I think when you start loading up with the 30-plus-year-old forwards, you should be at a certain spot defensively, and they're not there yet. And
I mean, I think the additions. I think the additions that they made were definitely a reaction to them losing to the Devils. You know,
but they lost because of bad defense. They didn't lose necessarily because of their forward play.
And the main defensive acquisition that they've made is someone who's even remotely known for his defense.
Right.
That's true.
This is
but the guys they got were all inexpensive, and
I get that.
The rest of that is fine, yeah. And maybe this is more of Russ, this might be again more of a room mix kind of acquisition. I mean, you're getting a long-standing former captain in Wheeler. You're getting a guy who's got postseason experience in Bonino. And they, you know, maybe they look at that as a way of enhancing and bringing other things out of the room.
They could have traded 3 of those names for just one decent defenseman, and I would have said that's a better upgrade for what this team needs. Because again, you still have Miller, you still have Braden Schneider, who has a lot to learn. I mean, this blue line is anything but good. It's about slightly above NHL average because of a guy like Adam Fox.
I think they're relying on internal improvement to take the next step. I mean, you know, Trouba's really good. Adam Fox is one of the best defensemen in the league. Lindgren's a solid defensive.
That's where it ends, right there. Then Miller's good, but not great.
But they need Schneider to step up into a top 4 role. And if that happens,
he's still young.
Now, Anthony, let's touch quickly on the Flyers because we talked about them. But you know, they added Garnet Hathaway. They added veteran Mark Stahl. Yeah. It seems like they wanted to add, you know, sort of good guys to the room, good teammates, but they're going through a rebuild, and you're going to see more players move out. So this is sort of like a clearinghouse right now.
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia's in the midst. I mean, they've found, you know, as everybody knows, they fully embraced a rebuild. It was interesting to hear certainly Danny Briere talk about, you know, Hathaway and Stahl, them being somewhat surprised that they figured at this point of their careers they would be looking to latch on to Stanley Cup contenders in this circumstance. And again, Stahl I thought had a pretty solid effort, obviously in the playoffs for the Panthers. But again, you know, I could see why Briere was surprised that Stahl wanted to sign on. But again, there's familiarity there, obviously, for with him playing under John Tortorella in his time in New York. And again, they could still have that opportunity to be able, by the trade deadline, to go to, if they want to, and Briere spoke to this, if they want to move to another team, they want to move, we will try to accommodate them in that circumstance. So and I would say certainly Hathaway was an interesting signing. That was a bit of a surprise certainly when it happened. He was one of the guys, obviously, at the deadline that, that Boston brought in to try to bolster their postseason run. And I see Hathaway, again, he's another, and there was initial criticism, obviously, although I think the deal is perfectly fine in terms of it. It's not the same as the Delorier contract with a no movement clause for 4 years. But I think they look at, they still see guys like that as necessary parts of their rebuild, that you need those kind of players to help foster the development of the younger players in their organization who have some kind of, again, Stahl knows he's worked under Tortorella, so he can be kind of a Tortorella whisper to some of the younger players. You are going to have Cam Atkinson back again, along with Sean Couturier again, to be able to kind of bridge and communicate and be able to say the thing, and be able to translate, this is what he's really looking for out of you here, and he's not just browbeating you. And that's really where they're at as a team right now. And again, the other moves that they've made, Peterson, I think, is kind of a fail-safe backup goaltending situation there. Yeah. We'll see obviously what happened with Hart, but again, the Flyers are where they are. I mean, they're going to be at the bottom. It's expected they will be at the at the bottom of the Metro Division as they begin to try to work their way through the restructuring of their team and moving forward.
Now, moving on to the Penguins, because Kev, I find them the most intriguing team in this division. I don't know whether they're going to be successful, but based on what Kyle Dubas has done in a little under a month, they trade for Riley Smith, they sign Eller and Achari and Andreas Janssen and Ryan Graves in free agency. They re-up Tristan Jarry, who, by the way, says, I'm not going to get hurt anymore. Yeah, okay, that's great, Tristan, that you have that positive mindset, but I don't think that is going to stop you from getting hurt. But anyway, but I look at this team, Kevin. I'm like, I like the pieces. I just don't know if the soup, the whole combo works, and you have to start worrying about Crosby at 35 and Malkin at 36 and Petrie at 35 and Letang at 36.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but that isn't Kyle Dubas's mandate.
No.
He's got, orders. He's got to follow orders, and given his orders, I think what he's done this summer is just as good as you can do. Like, one of his mandates was to try to clean up the fourth line. He's done that. It's going to be faster. It'll have some energy as well. He added Riley Smith, who's a much more proven goal scorer than the one he lost.
Soccer.
Yeah, good, just a good offensive player that he's added, and I think Graves gives them a dimension they needed. Now he's in.
I think it's kind of an underrated acquisition for them, actually.
Yeah, and now he's in on Carlson, and it's either going to be them or the Hurricanes, and being able, if it's true that he's able to move Petrie in this deal, and not give up only one first round pick. Like, I think he would be, I think he would have had a brilliant offseason if he accomplishes that.
Yeah. Anthony, what your thoughts on the Penguins?
I think I would agree with Kevin in that. I do have some questions about how all this works. And this is obviously going to fall to Mike Sullivan in this case about, trying to get these new parts to all work cohesively going forward. Because again, system depth wise, the Penguins don't have a lot. They get hit with injuries. It's not going to be easy for them. And but as Kevin stated, the mandate is right now, and this is what basically got, Ron Hextall flushed out of Pittsburgh, is that they're trying to win now. And that's what they're trying to extend the window of the big three as long as possible in this circumstance. Jarry at 5 years is going to be that's the one contract where I kind of go, okay. But beyond that, most of the acquisition stuff, I look at each of them sort of individually. I go, yeah, he helps here. Yeah, he helps here. Yeah, he helps here. So I think the Penguins will certainly be in the mix. How far they'll be able to push things against the upper echelon of the division, it's going to be, again, this is Sullivan is going to make his money, is getting all these parts to work.
This is like a a grand reopening for like a restaurant. It's like you get the sign, you go in there for 20 years. Now it's like grand reopening. You walk in and you're like, oh, I see there's new paint on the wall, but carpeting's the same. Couple changes on the menu. Like they have to prove it.
Hey,
like,
my local sushi restaurant literally just changed ownership. It went from one to another. Luckily, the food's still pretty good, thankfully, at the new place. But,
right, but you don't know that until you sit
exactly.
down.
Exactly. I had to actually order the food first, and that's just
Well,
That's where I'm at with this team.
my place in my old neighborhood, it was the place to go to breakfast on Sunday mornings. They closed down for a month. They redid the entire decor. You go in there, they're charging $4 more for the omelet that I normally order than I used to get, and it sucked, and I never went back again.
Right, so that's where I'm at.
So
with
the question
this team.
here is whether or not Kyle
Whether or not
Dubas
this
is
grand
a
reopening-
decent sushi chef.
Right, and I'm not there, so I have to wait. There's nothing they've done to change my mind that they won't come 2 points short next year either until I see the mix.
Go ahead, Kev. You were going to say something.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with what Russ just said there. I'm just stunned that Russ just had a conversation about sushi. Are you a sushi guy?
No, I am not. That was it.
I started that.
No, I know you started that, but
I started. I just threw that grenade in the room, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, you engaged on sushi,
I didn't
and I
engage on it because I know people like it. I do not.
yeah, I just couldn't imagine that you were a sushi guy. Like I doubt whether Mike is a sushi guy either.
I've gone to a couple sushi restaurants, and I made sure it says I only want anything that is non-fish or that it's cooked, like shrimp or something like that. If it's raw,
Translation: you're just order off the kiddie menu.
Right, you're already out of sushi at that point.
I got the California roll, Anthony. I was like, or I got the
imitation this and imitation
shrimp tempura roll, and that was it.
That doesn't even count as sushi. I don't think so.
Exactly.
Everybody's looking askance at me that I'm ordering this
shrimp tempura roll. He'll be happy.
That's what I got. Okay, finally, the Washington Capitals, who I looked at what they did, and honestly, they traded for Edmondson, and they signed Pacioretty, who's probably not going to play until Christmas. Other than that, they did nothing.
Carberry, they had a Carberry as a head coach, and he's been
I'm talking about
well regarded for some time. Like,
knowing what he did in Toronto, he was really good coaching the power play. He's got a great reputation. He was coach of the year in the AHL in Hershey. Maybe it's a new perspective, and it'll infuse some life into a team that I think there's some sort of it's stale, sort of so to speak. I heard that they're expecting Rasmus Sandin to really explode this year. It's like, I love the kid. I think he's got a lot of talent. The one thing he doesn't do, he doesn't play defense, and he's not strong. If he's gotten strong over the off season, offensively, he'll really be good. I think he could go score 50, 55 points. I just don't know defensively whether he'll be able to play. And Edmondson is a solid veteran, but they really didn't do much, Cal.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
Well, I thought this week Brian McClellan the general manager, talked about the situation there, and he basically said, we just simply had no cap space and no ability to move guys to create the cap space. Most of the guys that they need to move, like Kuznetsov, it's too hard to move them. You can't get it done. So they couldn't really do anything. He has said publicly, and I thought it was interesting because rarely do you hear a GM commit to younger players, 2 months before training camp is going to start. Mm-hmm. But he's committed to one of Russ's favorite guys, McMichael, saying he's got to play. He's got to step in. He's got to play because we don't have any options.
And maybe Lapierre gets in there too.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he said.
That's their best chance. I see it like he sees it. That's their best chance. Because we don't know if John Carlson's healthy either. Like, I don't know what he is. Sandin did great because Carlson wasn't there either. Right. So that's a part of it. But I don't know. I don't think the Capitals, I think they could fight it out with the Penguins, but I don't think either one of them are at the level of even the Islanders. So that's just where I'm at.
Okay, great show, guys. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, for Anthony Mangione, I'm Michael DeAngelo. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.